I'm in a 12-step program. I'm in an AA, right? So I was I'm in recovery, so almost 2 years now. And that really changed my life, getting into, 12 steps. And, and I know that's your book. But one of the things that stuck with me is esteemable people do esteemable things. And it's like...
Right.
And it's like when you have that choice to do something...
It's better than alcohol, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, if you're trying to stop drinking, you need something better than alcohol. And alcohol's pretty good.
Yeah.
So you better find something a lot better, man. Yeah, and it is. And then esteemable people do esteemable things. It's like, well, you want to figure out something that you're doing with your life that's worth not getting drunk and screwing up.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's fun.
Yeah, you want to have something on the other side of that teeter-totter that has some value to you.
You bet. And so that you can think, no, I'm not going to get drunk and screw that up.
Right.
Because, you might say, well, why do people drink too much? It's like, if you like alcohol, that's a stupid question.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, why do people drink too much? Well, because it's great.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, so why stop? Well, you do stupid things when you're drunk. You hurt yourself. You compromise your health. It's really hard on the people around you. You tend to turn into a liar, and it screws up your life.
Yeah.
It's like, but it's pretty fun. Yeah, well, it is. But you need something better than that. And what's better isn't being straight and not making mistakes. It's like that's all prohibition in some sense. What's better is, no, you need an adventure, man. You need to get out there and have something to do.
Yeah.
And something worth waking up for. And that's the substitute for the addiction. Actually, the addiction is the substitute for that, if truth be known.
Right, but eventually you can flip that around, and you can find the much girthier and more. There's a lot of sexy weight in having self-worth, and that's what I've started to slowly find in my life.
Yeah, and you might also, like, the thing too is, there's something kind of, I don't know, the bar scene, the heavy drinking scene, there's something kind of edgy about it, and something kind of adventurous about it. And, you see that it's kind of dramatized in people like Tom Waits, who's got that real hard edge, or Johnny Cash, or people, hard living guys.
Oh, yeah. Guys with 6 or 7 livers in them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, there's something kind of romantic about that.
Yes.
And fair enough, but, well, then what that means is you have to build something like that into your own life. So maybe you need to take an adventurous trip now and then. You got to have something there that's edgy to replace that.
And sometimes if people need a catalyst, so there's that moment, right? Like for me, the catalyst was like, I was experimenting with cocaine, and I sacrificed like a neat job opportunity with that. I had planned on being there for the job, and next thing you know, I'd spent the night doing cocaine.
Right.
So I realized, okay, this is a little out of my control, so I have to make this. But if people don't have that sort of...
I'm sure this must have happened when you decided to stop drinking. You must have thought, this isn't good.
I'm not going to be funny anymore. I thought that. I thought there was going to be ramifications, yeah.
Okay, and so what were they? What did you foresee happening?
I thought I wouldn't be funny. I thought that people wouldn't like me. I thought that I wouldn't be able to meet girls if I wasn't drinking or having drugs or...
Right, so that was what you were afraid of giving up if you stopped drinking.
Right.
What were you afraid of happening if you kept drinking?
I was afraid of not achieving my dreams. I was afraid of, ending up a drug addict. I was afraid of dying in my sleep. Something, dying under the influence.
Okay, so it's not like that doesn't happen to comedians.
Right,
it happens a lot.
Yeah, it's one of our go-to moves.
Right. Well, exactly. Well, it's not an occupational hazard because you're up late at night and you're around bars all the time. It is because you're up late at night and you're
Chris
partying
Farley right here.
Right. Exactly. Well, and it happened to all sorts of comedians and rock musicians. It usually happens at about 27. Weirdly enough. So you were afraid you're going to die, or you're afraid you're going to become addicted. So let's say what would have life like been like you for you if you were addicted? So you don't have a career anymore.
No.
Right? So you've given all that up and failed. So that's fun. So that's going to drive you even more towards drugs.
Yeah, it would have been all my dreams. It would have been miserable.
Right.
It would have been hell.
Exactly. So why quit drinking? So I don't end up in hell. Hey, there's a reason to stop. And then if you make that hell real, it's like, here's all the details of my personal hell. Yes, let's avoid that.
Right.
So then you have something to run the hell away from.
Right. So now you have something towards and something to run away from. And I'll say this too, if there's any young men or women out there who are listening to Jordan feeling like, well, I don't know if I start doing something different, like my friends are going to act a certain...
Yeah, they are.
They are.
Yeah, that's
But you're going to start creating conversations. You're going to become the intrigue because you're going to be bringing something new to the table.
You're also going to find out who your friends are.
Yeah.
Because if you're starting to put your life together and you have friends that object, those are not friends. Those are just people you know. They're not friends, because a friend is someone, this is one of the hallmarks of a friend. Here's 2 hallmarks. A friend is someone you can tell bad news to, and they won't tell you why you're an idiot, and they won't interfere with your suffering. They'll just listen, and maybe they'll suffer along with you. Okay, so you can tell bad news to them, and they won't tell you some worse thing that happened to them. They'll listen, and they'll suffer along with you. But a friend is also someone you can tell good news to, and the friend will say, wow, in this veil of tears, something good happened to you. Great, man.
Congrats.
I'm wonderful. It's rare. It's unlikely. Good for you. I hope 10 more things like that happen. And they're not envious, and they're not jealous, and they're not one-upping you. And if you're trying to get your life together, it's actually, if you're trying to get your life together and your friends get in the way, that's actually real useful for you, because you've now identified who your friends aren't. And you might think, well, I can't give them up. It's like, oh, yes, you can. And not only can you should, and it would be better for them. Because if they're aiming down and they want you going down with them, there's nothing good about what's happening to them, and there's certainly nothing good about that for you.
Yeah, they're not going to, and then they're going to learn, wow, I'm going to lose friends if I continue in these directions. Yeah.
Exactly.
Why is it hard for people to let go of what's so familiar to them, even if it's bad?
Well, because it's complicated. And the thing, that's a really good question. You discount the risk of familiarity that they're familiar with. So like, let's say,
because people are in relationships with the drugs and alcohol, people are in relationships with humans, people are in relationships with jobs, people are in relationships with their own selves, and they're living a lie every single day, but it's familiarity.
Yeah, well, you say, I have a job I hate. It's like, well, yeah, but I'm not dying from it. It's like not as bad as it can be. So you factored in the risks already. They get invisible. You think, well, I can't jump out of this job because what about all the risk? It's like, yeah, no kidding. You got to get your resume in order. You got to send it out. You got to send 50 of the damn things out before anybody will call you back. Then you have to go get interviewed, and maybe you're not any good at that. You have to come up with a story while you're a good employee, and maybe you're not yet, so you have to figure out how to do that. It's like, what about all these risks if I go look for a new job? It's like, yeah, absolutely, man. Those are risks, and they're harsh, and no wonder you're avoiding them. What about the risks for you to stay with this job you absolutely hate? Well, let's think that through. Okay, so I have this dead-end job. I hate it. I'm getting bitter. Where am I going to be in 5 years? I know where, because I've watched this with people. You're going to be just like you are now, except a lot more of what's good about you is going to be gone, and a lot more of what's terrible is going to be amplified. And you're going to be like, in 5 years, you're going to be 10 years older instead of 3 years older.
Yeah.
Right. And
because it kills your spirit somehow.
Oh, man. Yeah. So it's like, you think, oh my God, there's a terrible risk in pursuing this new job. It's like, yeah, there is a terrible risk. There's a terrible risk in you staying with your job right now. And so one of the things that's really, really freeing to understand is that you're screwed no matter what you do. There's no secure path forward. Give it up. It's risk everywhere. You think, oh my God, that's terrible. It's like, yes, except for 2 things. You can pick your risk. That's the first thing. So you get to pick your poison. That's something. And second, you're a lot tougher than you think. So even though there's risk everywhere, if you confront it forthrightly, what you'll find is that you can actually handle the risk. And that's the security.
That's beautiful. And there's so much growth to be had right there when you realize how much, like there were times I was like, man, I could never be a sober person because I'm afraid of, I can't communicate with women, or I'm afraid to, stand around in a circle with tough guys without having like a beer in my hand, or like all these little crutches, I can't. And then I remember when I got like 90 days sober, I was just like, holy shit, man. Like it was like the first time I'd ever done something, like for myself,
Yeah.
And it just, man, it felt unprecedented.
Yeah. Well, it was.
It felt like I'd gone to the moon almost.
How old were you when you started drinking?
I don't know, probably like 17 or 16, kind of regular.
Yeah.
It was pretty basic, and I never did a bunch of it, But my biggest thing was just emotional sobriety. Like I was so drunk on my own insecurities and low self-worth.
Well, alcohol really is a good drug for coping with anxiety. That's why people use it. So it does too. If you really like alcohol, it does 2 things to you. It makes you more extroverted and enthusiastic while you're on the ascending limb of the blood alcohol curve, which is why you have to keep drinking once you start. Because if you plateau, that goes away. So you got to keep drinking. Okay, so that's one thing. It makes you more enthusiastic and more full of positive emotion. And the second thing it does is reduce anxiety.
Yeah.
And so if you are a bit more socially anxious, and you also have that positive response to alcohol, which everyone doesn't have, by the way, then it's a great drug. But the problem is it's a great drug for the moment.
Right.
Right. There's consequences.
Yeah, the sounds when it's not great.
Well, it also, alcohol is an interesting drug because it actually doesn't make people stupid. This has been tested. Like alcohol, people who are drunk will take far more risk. And you might say, well, that's because they're too stupid to understand the risk. It's like, no, they're not. If you ask them about the risk when they're drunk, they can outline it perfectly. What it stops them from doing is caring about the risk. It's actually, and that's part of the anti-anxiety component. It's like, yeah, the risk is, that's why you can drive around drunk at high speed in a car, which is a really stupid thing to do.
Yeah.
We used to do that in the back roads of northern Alberta. It's fun.
Yeah.
But people died all the time doing it, especially in the winter. It's like, wow, this is great. It's great until your head's gone through the windshield, like so many things.
Yeah.
It's like jumping off a cliff. I'm flying, which is true until the last 1/10 of a second. It's like, then you're not flying, man. It's like, yeah. So alcohol has exactly that effect. It is a great anti-anxiety drug, but it does stop you, and you said it stopped you from learning the skills that you need in a social circumstance to be able to cope with that. So then it actually stops you from dealing with the anxiety. You don't have to learn how to overcome it. That's not good.
Yeah.
So
you're not really learning. You're kind of just staying in the. You're baiting you're kind of meeting the anxiety with a little bit of light medication, but you're never getting through whatever the anxiety was.
Yeah, you don't have to learn the skills. Well,
Right.
you said you like to stand there with a beer in your hand. Well, it gives you something to do. You didn't know what else to do. And then you didn't have to learn.
Right.
I had the same issue. Like I started drinking when I was 13, probably.
Yeah.
And
that's late in Canada.
yeah, that's right. I mean, I was way behind my neighbors. They were slugging it back when they were 4.
Oh, I've been in Edmonton and I've seen people. I mean, it's just people love to drink up there.
They
it's just
certainly do.
it's a fun culture, right? It's
And
a cultural thing.
On the farther north you go, the more the drinking becomes necessary, especially in the winter. So, and there's not that much to do in those isolated small towns.
Yeah, I drink my own blood probably.
Yeah,
if I
well,
get further
that's
enough,
it. Well,
you
that's
know?
funny. When I used to go back to the little town I was from when I was an adult, even if I hadn't really had anything to drink for years, it was like, well, what are we going to do? Well, let's go to the bar. Why? Well, because there actually isn't anything else to do. So, and so you end up there. But the alcohol it's a hell of a drug, man. You gotta watch it.
Do you think it's going to start get outdated? I start to think that alcohol is almost a drug of the past slowly. Like I could see us like with psychedelics and stuff like that becoming a little bit more in like the common sphere of conversation.
Well, it'd be interesting to see that we just legalized marijuana in Canada. Yeah. Like it's not completely legal yet, but the bill was passed. And so Canada is doing this countrywide experiment. And I know there is some data showing that in counties in the U.S. where marijuana has been legalized, the overuse of opiates for pain has decreased substantially.
That's awesome.
And the crime rates have gone down, interesting. Well, people stoned on pot? Like,
dude, it's hard to pick somebody's pocket.
Go break into a building?
Yeah.
I don't think so. You're just not going to get it together.
You might knock for a long time. I think you might knock at the front door. I don't think you're going to break in.
And you're not going to, you might, that's right, you might knock. You're not going to go out, what are you going to go out in the alley and have a fight? No, you're not.
A real slow fight.
That's right. Well, you're watching your hands. So
it's like chess with your hands.
Exactly. That's not going to happen. So, who knows? If we had to make a bad drug legal, the worst choice was alcohol. It's definitely the case. And I'm saying that as somewhat of a fan of alcohol.
Me too. Yeah, I like it.
But it's a bad drug, man.
And is it also starting to become archaic as we get into drugs that are, people are using psychedelics more, where people are a little bit curious about drugs that make you think
instead of drugs that make you not think.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, because alcohol is kind of an escape into, it's not full unconsciousness, although it certainly can be.
Yeah.
But and alcohol also makes people aggressive. It's the only drug we know that actually makes people aggressive. So you see a massive effect on crime rates because half the people who murder someone are drunk.
Oh, yeah.
And half the people who are murdered are drunk. And you're most likely to be murdered by a family member.
Yeah.
So I've been joking with my audiences is like, well, if you really want to get killed, the best thing to do is go drink with a family member. So which is actually statistically true, which is terribly comical. It's like, go get drunk with your family if you want to die.
Good evening, good afternoon, and other times. Thanks for watching that video you just saw. I mean, it was okay. But the next video you could watch could be way better. What if you watch a video right now that changes your life? Well, you could watch this one, or watch this one. Watch this one, watch this one, watch this one. Ah!